there in those wild positions. So Wesley unable to strike and unable to get that win. Will we see it in this game? Let's find out. Liem has started with his queen's pawn. Is it going to be a London system? The opening from the first game today in that London system actually favoured black. So Liem maybe with something new up his sleeve. Wesley now just about to make his first move. I don't think he's realised the game started.
No, he will get his time back when he just makes his move here. Wesley So looking for a win, probably in the final game with the white pieces, but maybe.
Yeah, if he can get a chance now, he would love to take it, Wesley So, but as you mentioned, Kaya, Wesley, normally he gets a bit more ambitious, a bit more aggressive with white. So in the final game today, if he gets that far, that's where Wesley will really gamble and really take those risks. We shouldn't forget, though, that if Liem wins this, straight to blitz.
That's true.
Yes.
That is true.
Straight to those tie breaks.
Yeah.
And, well...
OK, the game has started.
Off, and I think we are going to see a repeat of game... No, we're not. There's been a change.
There's been a change, and actually this opening, this exact position, white grabbing a pawn, actually playing the Queen's Gambit with reversed colours. The Queen's Gambit accepted, white getting greedy. It was seen in the game between Liem and Levon Aronian in the semi-finals, but a slightly different version this time. Still a well-known opening, but again with colours reversed. It's... we have seen white's extra pawn actually disappear. White couldn't keep that pawn intact, but suddenly, look at this last move from Wesley So, Jovanka.
Wow.
This last move, pushing a pawn. Wow, black's pawn push on this right side of the board. That is incredible. I've never seen that before. This must have been home cooking from Wesley So, but Liem, he hasn't blinked. He hasn't flinched. 17 minutes, both players playing instantly. It's level pawns on the board right now, but so much action again. This one's going to be just as wild as the previous two. I can guarantee that. Look at the pawn structure. White has two passed pawns on the left side, but black has two strong pawns in the centre. And that clash of ideologies... wow, I can barely even talk. This is so wild. But that clash is going to cause imbalance forever. This one, long-term, is just going to be crazy. Also, black's not going to castle. Black's keeping his king in the centre. He's going on the attack with his rook now on an open line. Does white really want to castle himself? If Liem ever shifts the king now, the white king is just going to be... He does it, but that white king's going to be a target for the rest of the game.
Yeah, totally. But he did answer your question, David. Yes, the king is prepared to be a target. Totally crazy position
Again?
On the board. Yeah, absolutely. Both sides... Their kings are incredibly uncomfortable. I mean, the white king is standing in the eye line of the black rook. You have the same situation with the black king. The black king is looking at a white rook, and it's also hugely imbalanced with the pawn structure. Black has complete control in the centre. White has fantastic endgame pawns there on the left. I tend to steer away from these positions when I'm choosing my openings because it's just too crazy for me. And there we see the black king stepping forward into the centre, as David predicted, and Liem developing a piece. And I have to say one thing, Wesley just keeps playing his moves instantaneously. And actually Liem as well. Both players have got more time on the clock than they started with. And the position is just wild.
Yeah, it's wild, but Wesley, I'm going to say it now, I think he's prepared this all. I think he's studied this exact position or something very similar beforehand. Liem is extremely predictable in these types of openings. We saw him in the semi-finals use this opening against Levon Aronian. So Wesley, he's gone deep into the position. We mentioned those pawn pushes earlier on, opening up lines on that right side of the board. That's something Wesley came up with, a really rare idea. And look at this, the black rook's getting ready to both start going for the white king. Both of them, they're going to stack up on that G-file. And suddenly, white king is going to come under heavy fire. Personally, I hate this position for white. I would never dream of going into something like this, especially if a draw is actually a decent result. Because this one, white will never have control. White's king is a huge target. Black's king is in the centre. Normally, that's breaking a lot of rules. But look how safe the black king is. Surrounded by pieces, surrounded by pawns. This feels to me as if it's going to be very one-sided. And like you said, Jovanka, you called white's pawns on their left side endgame pawns. That's where white's hope lies. If the queens come off, if the rooks come off, white's just going to win. Those two white pawns on the side of the board are going to sprint up the board. But you're an age away from achieving that. You're never going to get those queens off willingly from Wesley So. And look at this last move from Liem. He's actually just retreated his queen back to where it came from just a few turns ago. That is not a good sign for Liem. Black's rooks are just coming across. The black rook in the corner, it's going to swing across, team up with its friend and its fellow rook there. And
I don't understand that the queen move. I mean, why did he play that?
Beats me. I'm struggling to understand as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. The most natural move on the board is actually just to swing the other rook that's doing nothing and start to attack and provoke the white pawns to advance, because you never really want to push a pawn on the side that you're weakest on. And the side where there are glaring holes in the position, that's on the right side of the board, the king side. Yeah, I mean, I can just see a kind of a catastrophe occurring. For instance, the rook swings across. How are you going to defend the pawn? You have to step up your rook. You can't step up a pawn. And, OK, so the reason why you can't step up a pawn is simply because we're going to see another demolition sacrifice happen, and that would be bishop takes pawn. You don't have to think about it too hard. Pawn takes bishop, and now the queen will just come and take the pawn, and then checkmate will follow suit in g2 square. So you don't want to be doing that.
Yeah, you cannot allow the black queen to get into the game. And as Jovanka mentioned, if you can't push this pawn forward, it means the defensive job falls to your rook. The rook now has to take on these really passive duties defending this pawn. But all black needs, actually, is to add another piece into the attack somehow. If you can somehow maybe even reroute this queen round to team up everything on this line, that looks very scary for white. If you can somehow maybe get a knight into the centre of the board later on to kind of start attacking the white rook, that would also be super scary. White is banking everything on these guys, but it's going to take a while for them to start running, and they won't make a queen on their own without support. So, yeah, really, really risky strategy from Liem. And if in this current position, I'm still struggling to understand this white queen retreat.
I understand it now.
OK, go for it, Jovanka.
OK, it's because the pawn on a4 was under attack.
Simple. We weren't even looking at that side of the board, right?
No, exactly.
Defending the pawns, because, yeah, as you mentioned, actually, black's rooks were both going after it.
Yeah. So, yeah, wow.
We were so fixated on this side, right, going for the white king, trying to target this guy. But sometimes pawns are important too. They need a bit of love, and those pawns are supported. So actually, if we do see this position, I would expect Wesley So to maybe start thinking about how to get his queen into the game. You can kind of try and wiggle her in from this angle. You can kind of just kind of retreat her as well. And as I mentioned, relocate, switch over to the other side of the board. Lots and lots of options.
I love that one. That's quite sophisticated. For cave people like me, who just like to go for the kill immediately, can we just step forward with the knight?
In this position?
Yeah.
Which knight?
Sorry, the knight on f6. Jump it to e4.
OK, that's... Sometimes primitive is good, though. Sometimes aggression direct is good. So I guess the knight will trade itself off.
And so my idea is that pawn takes knight. And then my simple idea is I'm attacking your knight, and I'm also going to take your pawn.
Yeah, so if the knight moves, no matter where it goes, if the bishop will take this pawn, which is no longer defended by that knight, and a bit of teamwork means the black's won a pawn. An important pawn as well. White's king is running out of shelter. So maybe if this happens in this position, we mentioned it in the last game, actually. Sometimes if you have a piece attacked, you don't necessarily need to have a move to move it, retreat it. You can counterattack. So maybe white has a timeout to attack the black rook. So this pawn is no longer a target and you gain a bit of time. Still looks pretty good for black, to my eyes at least, but double-edged stuff here. And Wesley, so all of these questions we've just been asking ourselves, they're running through his mind. And in the current position, he's debating whether to go on the attack.
And you said, you called it wow, Jovanka, and we do have a little bit of a wow in the match for third place as well, because Artemiev in the previous game with the black pieces was able to get a win. So he's now up by 1 point against Levon Aronian, and I'm just checking the final position. He had a king and a rook against a king and 2 pawns.
OK.
Yeah, the key there is that the rook was able to stop the 2 pawns from making a new queen, and that's why Levon Aronian resigned. Yeah,
with 8 seconds left on the clock, Levon resigned. So Artemiev is now up by 1 point in that match.
Yeah.
And also their first game of the day was wild, and Aronian was actually 3 pawns up for nothing in that match in just a knight endgame. He had 3 extra pawns, and he still couldn't win. Wow. So Aronian, he'll be kicking himself. Missed opportunity there.
Yeah, things aren't quite working for Aronian today. Well, whilst Wesley is taking a pause, just like to remind ourselves we do have a quiz of the day in which we're asking, in which Olympic sport would you have the best chance of winning a medal and why? And the winner gets to pick one of these 3 chessable courses. And as always, you can tweet your answer using hashtag #ChessChamps, or you can go onto the Champions Chess Tour Instagram page and post your answer there. And I do have to read out some of the answers. Jimmy's gardening allotment said, I ran my very first 10K race today. Olympics, here I come. Well done, Jimmy. That is definitely an achievement. And Zaid Abidoda, okay, we do have that rook move on the board and the rook does step up. And okay, right. That is an amazing move from Wesley. I mean, totally unexpected. And yeah, but let me just quickly tell you this little joke that Zaid Abidoda says, archery. I've set up romantically so many people together. My friends call me Cupid.
Aww.
Okay, but we do have to take these moves that are fast appearing on the board.
Yeah, the bar is going slightly down, David.
Yeah, the bar's going down, but I still think there are really nice ideas. And back up. There are really nice ideas behind Wesley's rook shift. So it did look a bit mysterious. It looks like black's actually playing on this side of the board, on the right side, against the white king. So why shift your rook away? And actually, that's to get the rook out of the path of the knight. So black's knight now does have a clear path towards the white king. That rook was actually in the way of the knights jumping forward. So Wesley, he gained a bit of time attacking a white bishop in the process, trying to get the black knight active now. And I would expect to see him jump forward with his black knight. And the reason White Liem retreated his knight, firstly, is to protect his king. White knights are the best defenders right now, the only defenders really, but also the second row has been cleared. So White's rook there, defending its king, but also defending its bishop along the board, across the board. So, yeah, Liem just in full reverse mode, full defence mode. Are you surprised, Ivanka? Liem's played almost instantly. He's actually got more time than he started with, but with such a stinky position, such a dodgy position right now for White.
I know, and, well, my knight move that I suggested is slap bang in the middle of the board, but, of course, now that the rook has moved, he cannot be... OK, knight has moved. OK, the rook moved, and now the queen has come across. So, wow.
So Wesley
is really flexible. I'm impressed by his play, you know.
Would he be a gymnast if he was an Olympian? He's that flexible.
I mean, totally. I mean, I had all my eyes on the right, on the king side, and Wesley's like, yeah, actually, I can control the whole board. And now he's actually moved his queen to this kind of really innocuous square. But it's not that innocuous because, first of all, he's threatening rook takes pawn. The second, the pawn that's on a4. The second kind of idea, which he will have to time it, is actually maybe to step a pawn forward and then suddenly hit at the weak white pawn on e3.
So we do notice that it is quite nice in chess, if you can, to make your opponent's king feel uncomfortable. And this queen, as we mentioned, as Ivanka mentioned, is sat on the same diagonal as the white king. So later on, you could definitely try and unleash this queen by stepping a pawn forward and opening up this diagonal. But a huge threat, actually. I don't see a way to stop it. It's just rook takes pawn. And the problem for White is, right now, if this pawn ever steps forward, its fellow pawn drops, the other pawn next to it drops, you lose protection of that one. And if you move your rook again, for example, trying to open up the queen to protect this pawn, then there will be consequences. At the very least, I see black's rook coming across, swinging back, just playing on both sides of the boards. And now the rook, the queen, everything gangs up on this pawn and just overwhelms this pawn. And that looks like a simple pawn dropping. Also, black's knight, if it wants to, can start coming over, and everything's ganging up on this poor little foot soldier here. So this looks fantastically strong for Wesley, but I just want to point out as well, after his current move, the reason he's been playing on both sides of the boards, for example, attacking the king, then suddenly switching to attacking pawns on the other side. The reason you can do this is because you control the centre. This is why in chess, it sounds very basic, it sounds fundamental, but we say put pawns in the centre, control the centre. But if you control the centre of the board here, black's controlling literally everything here, these nice pawn chain as well. If you control that, then you can start playing on the wings with safety because you know you can't be targeted through the middle of the board. So you can switch your attention one side, you can switch back to the other side, you can do pretty much anything. And White here, actually in this exact position, has no breakthrough. White definitely can't play on the side that his king sits on. White definitely can't play on this side right now because black's pieces are locking down these pawns. And if you can't play through the centre either, you're just paralysed. You're blocked. And White now has no influence over the centre. These pawns are just going to sit here forever and control everything.
Liem finally spending some time, though, in this game, down to 13 minutes after 23 moves. So has that been a problem for him in this game, just not taking the pause to think?
Yeah, I think it was just a bit of an opening disaster. And he's been out-prepared, actually, every time he's had white, the first game today and in this game. He's just been punished out of the opening. And the first game, he made it work. He found a way to attack. He kind of lured Wesley into this kind of really crazy position, and he crashed through eventually. But this one, I don't see any ways to counter-attack against the Black King. Black's King, despite the fact it's in the middle, is so well guarded. Yeah. It looks very one-sided, this game right now.
Yeah, I think that this was good opening preparation by Wesley. And I have to say that this really unusual pawn move that Wesley made actually had been played before. But because it hadn't been played by grandmasters and it was way down on the popularity stakes, maybe this is just Wesley doing some good research, and Liem just didn't know about it, because it looks very, very dangerous, actually, for white.
But that's the surprising thing, right? Liem, we've seen him take time in the past when he's surprised out of the opening, but not this time. He reacted to that pawn push instantly. So maybe he'd studied it before, but hadn't taken it too seriously. Maybe he thought, OK, it's just been played by maybe lower-ranked players, lower-rated players. It'll never happen in this game.
Yeah, and maybe just take the pawn, blah, 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 and figure it out.
Yeah, take the pawn, survive, defend everything, but it's not that simple, right?
Yeah.
If you're sometimes if you study openings, but it's on a superficial level, if you don't look deeply enough, then later in the middle game, you suddenly reach a position like this and you realise, oh, I'm stuck. I can barely move, and my opponent's dominant. So that's why things like Chessable are so great, because it's explained the middle game ideas. It's not just about the opening. For example, Anish Giri's Naidov course. It's not just about memorising the opening moves. It's about understanding the middle game ideas later. And I think this one occasion, Liem, he's normally great at this, but this one opening, this one time, Wesley's targeted him in an area, a very specific area, but he's unable to find any middle game plans, any ideas for white.
What I like about the Chessable kind of whole framework is that, first of all, you work on memorising the moves. But in order to just to remember those moves, you actually have to concoct some kind of story, some plan. You have to get some understanding. And the more that times you repeat it, the better that understanding gets. And I kind of see it as just a suggestion, actually. So once you've kind of memorised it and you've understood the plans, then you've actually got to put it up on a board and play it out and see whether you can get the feeling for it, and feel for both sides of the side. Both sides of the side.
Both players.
Both players will approach the position.
Yeah.
So what is your favourite part of the game? When do you have the most fun playing chess? In the opening, middle game, or end game?
The end game. I could answer that one for him.
I like seeing my opponents suffer when they're on the defensive. And I'm just slowly grinding them down, tiring them out. But OK,
He's very popular with the arbiters in chess tournaments.
I'm a sadist.
They miss their dinners.
Yeah, I've had arbiters complain to me that they missed the arbiters' party because my game went on so long.
All right. Well, we do have a move, and the bar does not like it.
Yeah. It is an interesting move. There's a specific idea. There's a clear plan behind it. So I mentioned Liem maybe just a bit stuck, unable to get active. That white queen, it doesn't look like it's doing much right now, but there is a path towards that right side of the board for it. So that white queen on the diagonal is maybe going to start attacking the black king. Actually, the only kind of angle that the black king is weak from is that diagonal. So white's queen now wants to go to the edge of the board and start causing some nuisance, causing some annoyance. So that check, we don't necessarily want to allow it, but maybe there's no convenient way to stop it. And that's what Liem is banking on. So white's threat right now is to bring his queen to the edge of the board to this square with a check. And if, for example, you move your knight back, retreat the knight, you do stop the white queen from using the square, but you've also worsened one of your pieces in the process. So I wouldn't necessarily expect Wesley to retreat. And the most tempting move is to actually get greedy, take a pawn. And we might well see a trade here, and suddenly black's queen is coming into the game. So I think I would just take this pawn and hope that there's no annoying checks. If white does give a check now, maybe you can just retreat with the king and say, yes, you can win a pawn with white, but it is just a pawn. And also, black has crashed through on the left side. So now white is gambling everything, but he's on this side, sorry, he's gambling everything, but it's only a queen. She's got no backup. She's alone. She's actually... Yeah, I think she's struggling, even if the knight comes across defending the rook and attacking the queen at the same time.
Well, Wesley actually takes some time out and retreats his knight.
So I put this up on the board a moment ago. I said it's not what black wants to do, but you are at least controlling the white queen coming up to this square. So the black rook doing a great job on this fourth row.
The queens seem to be busy today.
Yep.
In all the games.
The kings, the queens, they're all at work.
Yeah, the kings, yeah.
But this queen right now, she wants to get busy, but no task for her anymore.
And we did see just a glimpse of Wesley's pants again before we went over to the analysis board. I think it's so much fun. It looks like he's wearing pajama pants. And I must say, it's a good day if you can sit in your pajama pants and bank $30,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did see someone that said bananas in pajamas. It's like
Wasn't that a cartoon or something?
Yeah.
Isn't it a rhyme?
Okay.
Okay, well, we have a move. Okay.
We have a couple of moves. So White's bishop actually traded itself off for one of Black's knights. The Black knight recaptured, so that Black knight just replaced its fellow there. But so after that couple of trades, White's rooks come across, and the two rooks have teamed up, not actually trying to help that pawn run, just doing a defensive job, tied down defending that pawn. So Liem, he's found a way to not lose on the spot, or at least not lose any pawns on the spot. But those White rooks, I don't know, they won't be too happy at doing this passive role, defending things right now. Black's rooks in comparison. One of them attacks the White king, puts the White king under pressure. The other Black rook keeps the two White pawns on that left side under lock and key.
Yep.
So right now I would expect Black to just try and improve his pieces. Not exactly sure how, though.
I would improve the Black queen, actually, because, I mean, I would do a quick assessment on this position. I'd be like, OK, look at those two White rooks. That's 10 points. The Black rook is 5 points and holding all this army together. And, well, before I talk about improving my queen, Wesley actually had a move for us, and he improves his rook. So he moves it to that beautiful fourth row, and he keeps upping the pressure to Liem. He's like, yeah, you defended your pawn. I'm attacking it again.
Yeah, and just a big threat, right?
Yeah.
In the position. He's just simply going to get greedy and try and take off White's pawn on that A4 square.
Okay.
Both of the Black rooks lined up against it, the Black queen lined up against it. It's hard to protect now. Maybe the White queen has to step across and defend it. Otherwise, White's just going to go down a pawn.
Right. That is the first move that comes to my mind, because simply, you just can't let the queenside pawns fall apart. I mean, that is the only compensation that White has in the position for giving Black complete control in the centre. So you've got to preserve them. Just hold tight and don't fall off. Just move the queen to the side.
Yeah, I really agree with that tweet, by the way, that we see there by Rudy a moment ago, enjoying Liem's style of play. It's so fun and so kind of... Every position is just unique. And this is one of those cases. However, he's on the defensive right now, and that last move by Wesley, that is a true sign of class, just lining everything up. And, OK, just step that White queen across, defend the pawns diagonally, and just try and survive. That's what Liem has to do for now. We might see that creative flair that he's been utilising. It might come into action later on today. He survived worse. We should remember the last game, game 2, he was dead lost. He was just a rook down, and he still survived that one. So just the fact that he's strategically worse now, he's not out of the game.
No. And I think, David, you'll really appreciate Shinoda's Quiz of the Day answer.
Ooh, okay.
They would choose to... they think that they would win a medal in football because it's like chess, but with 11 players. I like that one as well.
All the cliches.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
If they had Olympics for Football Manager, the simulation game, I would have won gold in that for years.
Oh, you like that? To play that?
I think I spent half my life playing it.
Yeah, I hear the situation is similar for many.
It's addictive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know many people whose relationships have ended because they were too addicted to that game.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, yeah, right now.
Is that the same for chess? Many relationships ending because just too addicted to this game.
You need to meet someone, I guess, who also understands that it can be all-consuming. It can be on your mind day and night.
Yeah.
It's 64 squares.
Yeah, I can imagine, actually, that, yes, it is a difficult pastime for if you're just watching your your partner play this game because, you know, you travel a lot of the times. I mean, you're also playing online a lot of the time as well. You get extreme emotion if you lose.
Yeah.
And but I mean, at the same time, if you understand, then you can have a lot of fun. Even better if you get your partner to join you in playing chess.
But yeah, I can imagine. Okay, we do have the move.
Yeah, so the move we expected, the White Queen had to step back to where she came from a few turns ago. She has to defend her pawn simply. So a reluctant move there from Liem. He didn't want to go passive with his queen, but he had to. And now Wesley's going across with his rooks. He's been really creative with those rooks. He's embarking on all these kind of strange maneuvers that we normally never see. We normally never see two rooks in the opponent's half of the board just kind of camping out while everything's still remaining, while lots of pieces are still there. So, OK, his idea, I guess, is maybe to step that... If that rook is attacked by a white knight, he's just going to step that rook down and start taking control of the third rank. Wow, Wesley, you said it. Flexible, agile.
Yeah, flexible, but somehow I don't like it. I don't know why I don't like this move so much. I think I prefer the rook on the open line attacking the king. I just kind of feel like there's control over both sides of the board. And, you know, I'm a big fan of pawn pushes, and so I kind of wanted to have some potential for pushing my own pawn.
So you think the rook's getting in the way of the pawns?
I do think the rook is getting a little bit in the way of the pawns. I just kind of really wanted to mobilise the queen.
OK. Yeah, maybe that black queen, she's done her job where she is. Maybe she needed to... Maybe that was the priority.
Yeah.
I agree in a way. I like this rook manoeuvre just for its creativity, but I don't really see the threat. I don't see the follow-up for black, necessarily.
Yeah.
I think he just wants to keep his rooks on the fourth rank and then get the black knight back into the game without blocking the connection between his two rooks.
Okay.
But he's given white time to create some threats.
The knight has attacked the rook, and now... You think that the black rook will step... Yes, it does step forward. And this is one thing I've noticed about Liem. Sometimes when it comes to critical moments, he doesn't pause to think. I mean, we saw this yesterday in the first game. You know, he had one shot at breaking out and causing white some trouble. And, OK, well, he's moved his rook.
And your move, Jovanka, you must be happy to see that.
I'm very happy, but it probably is not a good move.
So black's queen, the diagonal has been opened towards the white king. So black's queen now feeling much happier. But Liem took the opportunity to push his pawns. And you said it's not a good move. Did Wesley just forget that the white pawns are threatening to be pushed now? Because white's pawns are actually both defended by their rooks. Suddenly, black's rooks look a bit clumsy. You don't necessarily want to trade a set of rooks, and the white pawns are marching forward. So maybe black's still doing well, maybe black's still in control, but suddenly white has ideas, and white is creating some threats. White's pawns are continuing to run. Stakes are higher. Stakes have increased. The margin for error is tiny now for black. One wrong slip, and those white pawns will do a lot of damage. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, both of them are 3 squares away from queening, and which means the pressure is now on Wesley. Somehow I just feel that even though I look at the computer and the bar says, well, much better for black. Scratch that. I think the position is actually very level. Both sides have a lot of practical play.
Yeah, sometimes it's... I mean, when I play chess, I never think, oh, this position looks like a +1 position, because that can mean a whole variety of things. It can mean a short-term advantage, it could mean a long-term thing. I always think in terms of probabilities, in terms of what type of position I can control. Sometimes I think, OK, this one, I have maybe a 50% chance to win, but there's no chance of a loss. So risk-free, that's nice. You can just slowly maneuver. You can enjoy the process. And you have to think in human terms. You can say, this position... I don't know the chances, I don't know the probabilities, but it's easier for me to come up with plans. It's not easy for my opponents to come up with plans. And that's one of these scenarios right now. It's not clear what black wants to do, but it's 100% clear what white wants to do. White just wants to push those pawns. And that's why, despite the fact that the computer likes black, white, here, I think it's far easier to handle in a rapid format. And here now, both sides, 6 minutes each.
And there you go, David. One of them is already pushed 1 square forward, and now Wesley had to retreat his queen. And, OK, now the name of the game is simply all about getting the A-pawn 1 square further.
So you want to push immediately, Jovanka?
No, that's the name of the game. That's my plan.
It's the name of the game.
Yep.
Yeah, so the black queen, not on a great square. It feels so close, actually, for white to start jumping forward with his queen. Maybe you have to take a time out with white, because if you look at white's e3 pawn, the central pawn, that's actually about to fall off. It's attacked by black's bishop and by black's rook. I'm not sure necessarily whether you want to give that up.
I was thinking
Maybe
of
you can.
stepping up the queen and attacking the bishop.
Yeah, so bringing up the white queen to the fifth row, attack the bishop next to it.
Exactly.
That is very scary for black.
And the kind of crafty idea is that if you do capture the pawn, well, actual fact, that would be a huge mistake. OK, so Liem, now this move I didn't like. Now, I didn't like it because, first of all, the pawns can be blockaded on dark squares. And when you just look at the basics in the position, the fundamentals tell you black has a dark square bishop. So I think black is primed for a suitable blockade. And I just feel that somehow white's position has lost its flexibility. You know, the danger was in pushing the A pawn or one square further. And, OK, now Wesley jumps forward.
Wow, there's suddenly huge threats, actually, against the white king. As Jovanka mentioned, at the very least here, black could have just dropped his bishop back, just blockade on these dark squares. But no, he goes for direct attack, and why not? Now, suddenly, look at the queen. It's on a dark square diagonal. Look at the bishop. It's on a dark square diagonal. There are huge threats. Everything right now is held together by only one piece for white. This knight is defending too many things. It's overloaded. Suddenly, it's defending this pawn, but also this pawn. And that's why, if white gets greedy now, if white just tries and pushes his pawns, suddenly there would be a disaster. For example, you could actually even take this pawn with your rook, threatening a discovered check. And if you take with the knight, the queen would suddenly pounce. And queen takes pawn, defended by its knight. This would end up in a checkmating attack. The white king would be doomed. So right now, huge threat on the board in this position. This white knight overworked, as I mentioned. And you have to help it out. You have to actually block this diagonal, I think. You have to stop the black queen from trying to come forward. You have to step your pawn forward just to kill any of those potential threats. Yes, it's coming at the cost of this pawn, but that pawn, you can part with it. Your king at least will be safe, and you still have the potential for your own pawns to run.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely all about the quality of the pawns and not the quantity. And king safety is paramount here. Any other moves that white can play?
I don't see them. I think you just need to block off this the black queen's diagonal. Otherwise, it's just going to be a disaster. I'm trying to think what else comes to mind. I would be tempted maybe to use the white queen and go and capture this pawn, just because suddenly you defend this one. But I think the queen would be offside here, and black will just crash through by simply taking this pawn with his knight. Also, at the very least, black can actually grab this pawn.
Exactly.
So you kind of, in this position, you see, OK, I can go away with my queen, but at the cost of this pawn, no. White's only chance of winning the game is that pawn. OK, and David, I just peeked. You're totally correct. There's only one move to hold the balance, and that is the pawn move that you suggested. And that's actually quite a tricky move because... OK, he's played it, though. You don't want to weaken your king like that. OK, but he's found it. Liem is being accurate in his defence. And now I'm expecting black just to win material. Yeah, so black is going to capture the central pawn. And you mentioned weakening the white king, but actually you need some breathing space anyway. And now you've created a light square in front of it to go to. And black has the dark squared bishop. Black's queen was on dark squares. Now you've created that light squared kind of hiding place for the white king. So, yeah, he needed to find it. He found it, Liem. But it did cost him a bit of time. So now it's 5.5 minutes, plays 3 minutes. Oof. And Wesley, when he does capture the white central pawn, which I think he will with his knight, then Liem still has to continue being accurate in order to keep the white king nice and safe. Long term, white's doing great with those far advanced pawns, but short term, the white king under heavy fire. And you absolutely have to capture that pawn with the knight. Don't be tempted to capture it with the bishop, because then you would lose control of all the dark squares, and those dark squares are weak. OK, knight takes pawn on the board, and wow. Wesley raised his eyebrows at that last move. Because it wasn't the most natural move, actually. I was expecting knight takes knight, to be honest with you. Instead, Liem says, no, I've calculated absolutely everything. It's fine for me to advance my pawn. And giving the opportunity for black to do a discovered check with his knight. Yeah, literally anywhere the black knight goes to now, it's discovered check. The black bishop would check the white king. So you have a choice of how many squares here? 3, 4, 5, 6. You have a choice of 6 squares with that black knight. All of them give check. You don't really want to give the knight away. You can trade knights, for example. You can take the white defensive piece, but white's king would just shift and recapture. So, yeah, that's quite a cool move, just saying, OK, you're threatening everything, but I don't care. You try, you do your worst, and give me a check. I don't mind.
And Liem actually has very sneaky ideas well... The tricks and the traps continue because the bishop does retreat, and this allows white to actually give a check on b4 with the queen and capture the rook. But if you do this, then this will be black's crafty idea. Once the queen has captured the rook, the knight will come to the d1 square, attack the queen, and also give a check at the same time. So
yeah, we should show this. This would be a double attack check. As you mentioned, wherever the king goes, say it steps away. Jovanka, the killer blow here. It looks like black's blundered a rook, lost a rook.
Yeah, no, my friend. The knight will come to d1, check, and...
Discovered check, and next move, the queen actually drops off.
Yes.
But this didn't happen. Liem finally decided, OK, in this position, it was too scary having the king on this diagonal, so he's put his king nice and safe, tucked away in the corner. And
renewing the threat now of the queen coming to the b4 square to give a check to the king and also attack the rook.
So huge threat for black to deal with. You need to keep this rook safe. So right now I expect black to either move the rook or move his king. And yeah, this one is, again, 0.0 from the engine, but I think a draw is the least likely result right now.
I was going to ask, what do you think?
No, definitely not a draw.
Yeah.
and the players will also definitely not be offering each other draws here because absolutely anything can happen.
Look how weird the pawn structure is as well. White has these two pawns about to become new queens, but blockaded. Look at black's pawn chain. Connect 4 right now for black on those light squares. A really nice formation there. Black's actually a pawn up, but is it going to be that extra pawn, the central control for black, or is it going to be those wing pawns for white?
And Wesley moving his rook to a protected square. And now white can check, but the black king will simply escape.
So the white queen... OK, didn't give a check. We saw a trade of knights first. That doesn't change too much. So a very sensible move there from Liem. Now he has to move the white queen, I think. Maybe you can move the white knight, but suddenly you have to do something quick because black's pawns are actually starting to threaten running down the board themselves.
I know. I was just thinking that, hang on a second. When black's pawns start motoring, what's white's response? OK, so how are we going to... How is white going to even play? Well, what's the plan?
Good question. This position is far easier to play with black, actually, because you're just reacting, and white's knight has stepped back, attacking the black rook.
The black rook should move?
Yep, it will move. Maybe white's idea is to go and use his queen to capture a pawn, that pawn on h7, white's queen on the diagonal.
But you can just let it go, in the words of Elsa from Frozen. Because ultimately, it's all about the quality of pawns, and that one is irrelevant because what really matters, especially when it comes to black, is those connected pass pawns, especially the one that's on c4, because when that one starts marching forward, you can even give up a bishop, and those pawns will still be dangerous.
Yeah, so we're expecting Wesley maybe to bring his rook the whole way across to attack white's queen. Maybe you can just step it one square across to block that white queen's diagonal. A few options here, a few very tempting options for Wesley. So if he's feeling fruity, if he's feeling brave, he'll probably let white's queen go and capture that pawn, as he does.
OK, so what's going to happen once queen takes pawn arrives on the board?
Good question. I think maybe the black queen will start to get active. The black queen is the worst blockader. Queens, they should... I mean, they're the best piece, simply. They don't want to be blockading pawns. They need to be doing more active duties. So the black queen is ready to jump into the middle of the board. And if that black queen ever ends up on a light square diagonal attacking the white king's actually trapped.
Yeah.
And look at Wesley, he's talking to himself.
Yeah, he is definitely talking to himself because his position is absolutely insane. There's so much craziness abound. And, well...
I think the killer move now is actually black can ignore this trade of rooks, bring the black queen into the centre of the board. He's done it. Now there's a trap. If white plays rook takes rook, which he has to, is strictly forced right now, the white rook attacked. After this trade of rooks, white cannot go and grab a pawn later on because black's queen, note how it just wants to step down one square and hit white's king along this diagonal. The white king, that would actually be checkmate. The black bishop already cutting it off on dark squares. The black queen wants to deliver checkmate on the light squares. So this position, queen takes pawn, is not possible. It just allows checkmate.
Yeah, and that's all to do with that sleeping giant that's tucked there on a7. That bishop is cutting the king's escape squares on the dark square, so can't do that. And then somehow it looks like it's going to be game over, actually. Because
what
can white do? I mean, white's king is in a lot of danger.
Wesley bobbing his head there. He knows he's about to win.
Yeah. OK, the knight comes to develop itself and is also attacking the pawn. And Wesley talking to himself.
I think maybe he's singing.
No, I think he's trying to get into the flow. He's trying to remind himself that this is it. And
I'm going to remind myself to ask him about that afterwards. What were you saying to yourself?
Well, you can do this with online chess. Obviously, on over-the-board chess, you cannot do that whatsoever. That just would be distracting for the opponent. But here, you can sing.
Sing when you're winning.
You can laugh.
And yeah, right now, black's spoiled for choice. Firstly, you can just, that far advanced black pawn, you can just step it forward. If you want to be extra aggressive, you can just use the black queen. Go and attack that white knight.
Yeah.
If white's knight moves, there's still going to be checks along this diagonal towards the white king. White's king is helpless.
And you're just suggesting put that queen on the e2 square.
Yep, or the e3 square, anywhere, I think. Attack that black knight, attack that white knight with your queen, and game over. White's pieces cannot stop the black pawn while keeping their king kind of protected.
Yeah.
So white's pieces are just stretched to the limit. It just takes one final threat to break that defensive formation, and game over. So Wesley So he was so close last game. He was on the brink. He's on the brink this time as well. But despite the fact he's not a rook up like he was last time, I think this position's even easier to handle because black's bishop's doing a fantastic job stopping the pawns, stopping white's pawns. And if those pawns aren't running, it's just one-sided. OK, Wesley, we're expecting him to move his queen.
I have to say, he has struggled. OK, he does. He has struggled to finish off the games with great positions today, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of complications in that kind of position, and it was a queen and knight attacking the the white king in that position. And here it's completely different because, hey, take a look at it. This is just overwhelm. And Liem, he is trying, though.
He's trying, so he brings his queen across one square. The queen defends her knight, but also the white queen maybe trying to jump up the board to deliver some annoying checks. But I think you can just allow that. I think that's just one check. The black king is just going to run away. The black king can actually just move over to the right side of the board. It's safely protected by some pawns. So right now, if you want to overwhelm the opponent's pieces, just push your pawn. If white's queen takes that pawn, black's queen actually comes down and sits next to the white king. That is checkmate. The black bishop and queen together on this diagonal will create this checkmating pattern. So white's queen, it pretty much has to go and give a check, and you have to hope and pray that you'll find some drawing mechanism there that the black king won't escape.
OK, well, there is a check. I mean, like you correctly pointed out, the queen can come to c7 check, and then, OK, it's on the board. And now if the king steps here, maybe you can get your queens off by going queen to f4 check.
OK, you want to trade the queens?
I want to trade them off.
OK, and the problem for white, OK, Wesley's really enjoying this position. He's smiling. But the problem for white is if the queens disappear, they have to, as you mentioned, Ivanka, to stop any checkmates. Now, black is simply playing with an extra king. White's king is too far away. Black's king going on this adventure, gobbling up pawns. Yeah. White's pawns are easily blockaded. The black king is going to do the work. And the black pawns are going to march forward. Black's king can step across. White's knight is paralyzed, stopping black's pawn. Everything's wrong with white's position. Yeah. No chance.
And there's just no way for the white king to actually approach that b2 pawn to release the white knight. So that's it. I mean, all Wesley needs to do is just push his pawns in the centre, especially the f pawn, which is just done. Liem is helpless.
Yeah, Liem is paralysed. He can only move his knight right now. The white knight is forced to stop black's pawn, advanced pawn there. You can blockade it, but the white knight can't do anything else, simply, and the white king can't do anything. We see this opposition of the kings. White's king is trapped on the bottom row. And Liem, he's powerless, so he resigns.
Wow. Wesley So